You're tuned into the Philly Fans Podcast with your hosts Daniel McDevitt and Ethan Whitney.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 9th installment of the Philly Fans Podcast. Hard to believe it has already been 9 weeks, 9 super fun weeks, and as you may have noticed, we are undermanned this week, similar to the Philadelphia Phillies themselves. Dan could not make it, so it will just be me for this week's episode, and we got a lot to go over. It has been, I think, 11 days since we last dropped an episode, so it has definitely been a minute, and I guess let's just start with probably the biggest headline from last night, and is that Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber have been moved to the 10-day injured reserve list after injuries they both sustained last night. Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber obviously had been two of the best bats in this Phillies lineup. Harper had been making an MVP case, and in my opinion, was on track to go win that MVP, and he still can. But we're obviously, gonna have to see how long he is out for. Kyle Schwarber had done a much better job not being a home run or bust guy this year. He had his average up to, I think, somewhere around 240. I'd have to fact check myself. But for tonight, it had been Cody Clemens has been called back up from AAA. Johan Rojas has been called back up from AAA. And Cody Clemens will be starting at first base, in replacement of Bryce Harper. And Kyle Schwarber is starting at, Nick Castellanos is starting at DH in replacement of Kyle Schwarber, So, Casty moving to DH isn't great. We'll talk about in a minute how he's been getting hotter as these months have moved on, how he's just gotten much better at the plate compared to his atrocious start to the season. Still not a guy you'd love to have at DH. Obviously, you'd rather have Schwarber, and it also does mean more playing time for Whit Merrifield, who has been in my opinion, a complete liability, both, I wouldn't say with his glove. His glove's okay. But at the plate, he's been a complete liability. He's getting the start in left field tonight. I believe the outfield is Merrifield in left, Rojas in center, and Marsh in right, I believe. I don't know. I'll fact check myself in just a minute here. But obviously, undermanned already, missing JT Realmuto. We're still waiting to hear when he will come back. But losing the guy who is probably, I don't know anymore, but would have probably gone on to go win MVP in Bryce Harper. He had been that good. Is devastating, especially when we talked about it on last week's episode. We were hoping that because Mookie Betts and Yoshinobu Yamamoto had gotten injured, that could be an opportunity for the Phillies to bridge their gap with the Dodgers as the 1 seed, and even the Braves, who are starting to catch fire in the NL East. Fact checking myself right now. And yes, it is Brandon Marsh in right field. So, outfield, I believe this is the first time we've run an outfield like this. Castellanos says, nah, I don't think he's been a DH all season. So, we know he can hit. We're just hoping he can stay hot. We're getting back to the topic of Nick Castellanos. He's gotten a lot better. He's gotten a lot of hate, but he's gotten a lot better since the beginning of June. He's hitting .250 with 23 hits, 4 home runs, 15 RBIs, and he's scored 11 times in the 23 games he's played in the month of June. That doesn't sound, those numbers on paper don't pop out to you because those are average stats. That's okay, that's good, that's serviceable. But compared to what he had been, he went from someone who had been a hole in the lineup, essentially. Someone who, at least for me, when he went up to the plate, I had almost no faith at all, to now he's back at average, and you'll take that because you don't need Castellanos to be exceptional because he's never going to be the top guy in this lineup. So if he can just be average, essentially, instead of just a liability, that's all we need. And now, obviously, we're hoping he can probably step up now because he's getting a lot more. There's a lot more pressure on him in the box now because he's the DH. Now we don't have, which his glove has been very good this year. He's made a lot of adjustments in these last 2 seasons to be a lot better in the fields, but now we don't have that. So his value to this team until Kyle Schwarber comes back or until someone else is the DH is completely reliant on what he does in the hitter's box. So we're praying that he can hopefully get on some sort of hot streak or just be a good DH, essentially. He's going to have a lot of this offense, the pressure of this offense, a lot of it is on his back now with him stepping up to the DH and Schwarber and Romuto already being out as is. I was going to talk about June Kyle Schwarber, but unfortunately, he is now injured in the month of June. But obviously, he had been exceptional. We made a TikTok about it. I'd suggest you go check it out. But here's something I wanted to talk about. I was hoping Dan could be here for this because I want to know what he thinks. But Sir Anthony Dominguez, we had talked about this a couple times before, had been very bad this season. Is he back, though? Because look at his statistics since May 3rd, 2024. He's 1-0 with an ERA of 1.10. In 18 appearances, he has 15 strikeouts and a save. Since May 3rd, so almost 2 months ago, we're recording this as of the 28th of June, so almost 2 months ago, 1.10 ERA. I don't know what adjustment he made, but he went from someone who, even last year, anytime he stepped on the mound, you're like, oh God, like, that's not someone you want, excuse me, that's not who you were looking to see, and two, someone who has been a absolute rock for this Phillies rotation, or for this Phillies bullpen, excuse me. And we already have, I believe, statistically the best bullpen ERA in baseball because you already have guys like Matt Strahm, who has been unbelievable. He didn't allow a run for 2 months, and he's been okay in this month of June. He did not have a good night yesterday, but neither did the whole team. You have Jose Alvarado, who is. I love Jose Alvarado. I know a lot of people who don't. He's always shaky, but still a good reliever compared to, like, he's got, I believe, mid threes in the ERA. That's still a good reliever. You even have guys like Jose Ruiz, who's been great, Orion Kirkring, who's great and only getting better because he's so young. And you already have obviously Jeff Hoffman. He's phenomenal. He's basically stepped in as a guy who can be our closer, even though we don't have someone who's typically a closer because thank God Craig Kimbrell is no longer on this team. But when you have, it's just really just highlighting the success of this bullpen. You have another guy who is putting up career numbers, and since May 3rd, there's not. So Anthony Dominguez has been as good as any reliever in baseball, and that's what you need. 1.10 ERA, like that is exceptional. Sticking with pitchers. This time we're moving to the starting rotation. I'm sure you saw the news if you're a Phillies fan. Christopher Sanchez has inked a 4-year extension to stay with the Philadelphia Phillies with club options in 2029 and in 2030, meaning the club could decide to void his contract. This is completely deserved. I know, once again, I know Dan isn't the biggest fan of Christopher Sanchez. I was interested to see what he was going to think about this, but Christopher Sanchez has been one of the best left-handed pitchers in baseball this year, period. The fourth starter on this team is probably better than a lot of teams' first starters. That is how good this bullpen is. This rotation is. That is how good Sir Anthony Well, I'm all over the place right now. That is how good Christopher Sanchez has been. Excuse me. He has been a rock on the mound. He just inked a 4-year extension, which is going to, he's, in my opinion, a very team-friendly contract. I believe it goes 1.5 million next year. The extension kicks in next year. 1.5 million next year, 3 million, then 6 million, then 9 million. His salary peaking at 9 million to me is a absolute bargain, and I am thrilled with Dave Dombrowski and with Rob Thompson for getting that done because that is probably the cheapest he was going to be. Because if we waited to the end of the season, he's earning more money than that, whether it be to play somewhere else or whether it be to play in a Phillies uniform. So I'm all in on this extension. I love it. But not everything can be positive in this rotation, unfortunately. And this is Dan's words. I completely agree with it. Taijuan Walker is a bust, but Dave Dombrowski and Tom Middleton won't admit it. I 100% agree with this. Taijuan Walker was, frankly, an experiment. He came in around the same time as Zach Wheeler did, both of them from the Mets. I believe Taijuan Walker came from the Mets. He's failed. He is a failed experiment in Philadelphia. He has been, and I don't understand. Spencer Turnbull did make his return to the rotation because Phillies probably exaggerated an injury to Taijuan Walker to put him on the IL and to slot Mercado, the rookie, and Turnbull into those spots. If they need to, we could run a 6-man, honestly, with how deep this is. Taiwan Walker, I don't think I think it makes zero sense to have him starting on the mound anymore. Because, for one, he is a liability on the mound. He's one of the worst pitchers in baseball. I truly believe that. And I think not even just from a pitching standpoint. Well, yes, from a pitching standpoint, but from the standpoint that he gets paid it's close to, I believe, close to $20 million this team owes him. For him to be a liability when you have guys like Spencer Turnbull, who's getting paid essentially nothing, to be infinitely, infinitely better than Taiwan Walker has been on the mound this season. Spencer Turnbull is significantly cheaper, and he is significantly better. I'd argue that this rookie that we've got coming up is going to be significantly better than Taiwan Walker. And when it comes to the playoffs, that is $20 million we're not using because there's 0% chance that he's in the playoff rotation. The playoff rotation is going to be Wheeler, Nola, Ranger. Maybe not in that order, but those are going to be the three guys. Zero chance he's entering that playoff rotation. And in my opinion, I don't think he's a Philly. If he's not, he might be traded on August 1st, which is something I want to talk about. And he might get traded in the offseason. He might get DFA'd for all I care. I do not think by opening day of 2025, I know we're looking very far ahead right now, but in my mind, 0% chance, 0% chance Taiwan Walker is in a Phillies uniform by the beginning of next season. In my opinion, he might not be in a Phillies uniform next week or the week after. He might not make it to August. He's definitely not making it to next April. 0% chance. Now that rant is over, back to positive things in this rotation, and that is Aaron Nola, a name we just mentioned. Aaron Nola had by far his worst career season last year. He was getting absolutely shelled on the mound. Could not contain the deep ball. I believe finished his season with an ERA around 4. I know it was definitely above 4. I think it was around 4.1 something. It was absolutely terrible. Had a fantastic postseason to his credit. Was a very good playoff pitcher. And I think he made an adjustment. They might have mentioned this on the playoff broadcast, but I think he made an adjustment around September because I did some digging. Since excuse me, since September 4th, 2023, so going back to last year, he started against the Rays that day, so that's where we're basing off of. Since September 4th, 2023, he has a 9-3 record, a 3.45 ERA, 113 strikeouts in 20 appearances since September 4th of last year. Completely different than what we know him to be last year. Last year we knew him to be, I believe he led baseball in home runs allowed by pitchers. At least he was definitely top 5. He was atrocious. This year he has a 3.39 ERA. He is back to being the Aaron Nola that we know. And thank God, because he got a bag in this offseason. So if he was not going to perform to that, that was just going to be another bad contract in this rotation, which is the last thing that we need when we're already one of the most expensive teams in baseball. I believe we're the 4th most expensive team in baseball already. So thank God he's lived up to those numbers, and he has been exceptional. And Aaron Nola is one of my favorite Phillies. I love Aaron Nola. Aaron Nola got a lot of hate last year. I was hoping I could defend him, but you really couldn't defend how he played last year, and I'm so happy to see him back at the top of his game because if the Phillies are going to go far this year, like they did last year and like they did the year before that, they're going to need Aaron Nola in the postseason. So it makes me feel a lot better that he'll be good in the postseason when he's performing in the regular season because there was a lot of questions about how he was going to do against the Marlins, even against Atlanta, and eventually against Arizona going into last year's postseason. So huge relief to see him back to who he was. I'm very happy to see him back to where he was because, like I said, I love Aaron Nola. He's one of my favorite Phillies, and love to see him succeed like he has. Moving on, Phillies pulled the first 1-3-5 triple play since 1929, 95 years ago. You heard that right. I read that right. 1-3-5 since 1929. Better yet, it came off the bat of Matt Vierling, the former Philly. I love Matt Vierling. I love 135 triple plays apparently because that was cool as hell. As heck, excuse me. But so a little fun fact from that Tigers series, which we ended up winning, and I think that's just about all we got. Except there is one more thing actually on the agenda that I wanted to mention. I don't know if you guys saw the article. I believe I saw it through Jeff Passan. He might have just retweeted it. There is a new pitching machine that batters have been using that can replicate not just any pitch in baseball, but any specific pitcher's pitch in baseball. So, like, you want to see, let's say you're not Bryce Harper, he's injured. Let's say you're Edmundo Sosa and you're getting ready to face, I think Jesus Luzardo pitched last night, but we'll just use him as an example. And you want to see Jesus Luzardo's fastball. This machine can replicate what his fastball specifically looks like, and it combines his windup, and it can get any single pitcher in baseball, I believe, their exact pitch. That is insane. That is absolutely wild. I did not believe it when I first saw it. I went and I was like, there's no way. This has to be like Jeff Passan's clickbaiting us right now. There's no freaking way that this is true, but no. It is one of the most interesting things I've ever heard of in baseball, and it's definitely going to change the way hitters prepare for games and for series forever, if assuming this is the real deal. So that is fascinating to me. Maybe I'm just a nerd. I don't know. I thought it was really cool. But to recap, you can find the Philly Fans Podcast on Twitter and on TikTok. I know this is a shorter episode, but we are lacking our second host. You can find us on Twitter and on TikTok at Philly Fans Podcast. You'll see clips. Why am I stuttering all today? You can see clips of this episode and of other episodes all the time on the TikTok. We try to get as much out there as we can. Please tell us what you think in the comments below and in the comments on TikTok. You can find us on Twitter, where we post all the time about the Phillies games. We run polls all the time about what you guys think the Phillies should do. Excuse me. You can find me personally, gets wrong every time, I think here, if not here, at Ethan_W6. You can find Dan at let me see if I remember this. DMC Devitt 25, I believe it is. DMcDevitt25, I think that's how it is. Go check him out. Please show some support. The support on the Twitter and TikTok, the Twitter and TikTok specifically the last couple of days has been exceptional. We can't thank you guys enough. We're trying to build a nice community over here. But thank you so much for making me a part of your day, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day and go good.